are you, students? Are you fine? Last time on the topic of evolution, we have discussed about the evidences for evolution. We have seen different types of evidences for evolution takes place. We have seen fossils as an evidence, fossil records, different types of fossils. We have seen comparative anatomy as an evidence, as a strong evidence for evolution. We have seen comparative embryology. We have seen comparative biochemistry, and so on. Today, we are going to discuss about, or today we are going to learn about the processes of evolution. What processes are there in evolution? And by the end of this lesson, you are going to discuss, or you should be able to define what natural selection means, what type of natural selections are there. We are going to, you have to explain about the role of evolution, including directional selection, stabilizing selection, disruptive selection, isolation and speciation, adaptive radiation or divergent evolution, convergent evolution, and finally, parallel evolution. Are you ready, students? Very good. Let's proceed. Natural selection, as we have discussed in the theory of evolution on Darwin's theory of evolution, this theory states that, or explain the origin of a species in terms of survival of those best adapted to a specific environment. When you see this figure or picture here, there are different colored beetles here. Beetles with green color and beetles with brown color. But the beetles which are seen by the birds or the predators are the green one. So the predators easily observe or see the green beetles and they collect them and eat them or feed them. Eventually, the green beetles will be minimized or will decrease in number, and the brown beetles, because of less predation, their number increases over time. This shows that nature selects which are best fit. In this case, the brown colored beetles are selected by nature because they have survived and increased their number because they are the fittest one, the best one, which are selected by the nature. So survival of the fittest theory or theory of natural selection states that survival of those best adapted to a specific environment are best fits. Students, how many types of natural selections do you know? Think about it. You'll be given 1 minute to think about it. Okay. Have you tried some, students? Very good. If you mentioned there are 3 types of natural selections, and the first one is directional selection, the second one is stabilizing selection, and the third one is disruptive selection, you are correct. Let's see these 3 types of natural selections one by one. The types of natural selection, the first one is directional selection. Directional selection states that individuals at one extreme could have a disadvantage, whereas those which are at the other extreme have an advantage. In nature, there are 2 extremes. For example, the cold areas and the very warmer areas. Organisms which are living in these 2 different extremes, in the colder area and in the warmer area, have adapted in different ways. Organisms which have adapted to cold temperature or in the cold extreme doesn't have the ability to live in the warmer areas. For example, thicker fur or long hair in foxes. Thicker fur foxes live in colder area in order to overcome the cold temperature. And thinner fur foxes, they live in a hotter climate. These foxes with thinner fur couldn't able to live in a colder area because they couldn't resist the extreme cold temperature. So organisms which are living in one extreme couldn't live in another extreme, and organisms which are living in the other extreme couldn't live because they didn't have advantageous alleles in them. As you can see, this figure shows 2 extremes of the climates. Organisms living in that climate cannot able to live in this climate, and vice versa. The second type of natural selection is called stabilizing selection. In stabilizing selection, in a stable environment, individuals at both ranges of the value of a feature are the least well adapted, but individuals at medium values have a greater chance to survive. Birth mass of humans is a very good example. Babies who were very heavy or very light, they show a higher neonatal mortality rate. Neonatal mortality rate means during birth or after birth, babies with heavier heights or very heavy heights and babies with light heights, they will die because they couldn't survive the environment. But babies in the mean mass or in the moderate mass or medium mass, they can survive. That means it is in a stabilizing size, in the middle size. Look, this is a site where stabilizing selection takes place. But organisms which are out of the mean value have a less chance to survive. But organisms in a medium size or a medium, in the case of birth mass, in a medium weights, they have a greater chance to survive. This figure shows also similar with the upper one. And the third type of natural selection is called disruptive selection. It is very converse of stabilizing selection. Organisms or individuals at both extremes of a range have some advantage over displaying the mean values. As an example, we can take Darwin's finches. Darwin's finches, which have thinner and longer beak, increased in number. That means they have survived. And Darwin's finches on Galapagos Island with shorter beaks also increased in number, also survived. But finches with average beak lengths, they decreased in number because their beak size couldn't let them to get the nutrients or food. But these two types of finches, because they have adapted to that area, because they are best fit to that area, they have survived. They have increased in number. They have over-reproduced because there is no food scarcity, because they have adapted their beak to fit the food type they have get over that island. But the finch with average beak size, because of food shortage, they couldn't reproduce and they didn't increase in number. So organisms at different extremes, in these two extremes, have a great chance to survive, but organisms with moderate condition or in the mean value have a greater chance to survive. Such kind of natural selection is called disruptive selection. Students, how can natural selection leads to formation of new species? First, let's discuss what a species means. A species is a group of related organisms or individuals of the same population with similar biochemistry. When we say similar biochemistry, similar genetic makeup or genetic information, and with similar physiology. Physiology means structure. And evolutionary history. These related organisms, if they produce offspring, which are fertile offsprings, they are called species. And let's see what the term speciation means. A speciation is the process by which new species are evolved or formed. How many types of speciation do you know, students? Can you list the type of speciations you know? Let me give you 1 minute to think about it. Students, if you mentioned there are two types of speciation and their name is allopatric speciation and sympatric speciation, you are correct. What are the common features of allopatric and sympatric speciation? The common features are both allopatric speciation and sympatric speciation. They involve isolating mechanisms. isolating mechanisms that prevent different populations from interbreeding for a period of time. If two different populations are prevented not to breed each other, the resulting will be new species arising. Different selective pressures in the different environments leads genetic differences between the two populations. As a result, reproductive isolation may occur. Distinct species will be formed. If the two species are isolated by breeding, that means selective, in addition, there are selective pressures. So distinct species will be formed. Let's see these two types of speciations one by one. The first type of speciation is called allopatric speciation. Allopatric speciations, it occurs when a population from existing species become geographically isolated. Two species, if they are isolated geographically, if they live in two different areas or in two different places, such kind of the speciation type which is formed during this process is called allopatric speciation. It is caused due to different reasons. The first one is when a river changing courses or a mountain range being created. These two types of shrimps, because they are geographically isolated, eventually they have adapted in different ways and they became two different types of shrimps. New types of species has arisen. Such kind of speciation is called allopatric speciation. The next type of speciation is called sympatric type of speciation. Sympatric speciation, it doesn't need physical separation, or it does not involve geographical isolation. Two diverging populations may inhabit the same area, but it will be prevented from breeding in a number of ways. Organisms living in the same area, but in order to prevent breeding each other, there are number of ways which isolates those organisms which are living in the same area. Here are some ways of isolation. The first one is seasonal isolation. That means members of the population reproduce at different time of a year, in different seasons. Some members reproduce at winter, some may reproduce at summer, and so on. So by differentiating their reproductive season, it may prevent breeding each other. So if it is prevented, or if breeding is prevented, there will be a new species arising. The second type of speciation or sympatric speciation is in temporal isolation. Members of two populations reproduce at different time of a day. Within one day, there are different time intervals. So at the morning, at the noon, and at the evening. So some reproduce at the morning, some reproduce at noon, and some reproduce at night time. So by isolating their reproductive time in a day, they can prevent breeding each other. So such kind of sympatric speciation way of isolation is temporal isolation. The third one is behavioral isolation. Some organisms behaviorally isolated. Members of two populations have different courtship behavior or courtship patterns. Courtship means mating behavior. So by this way, they can isolate their reproductive patterns. So these are the three ways of isolation of population against breeding. So the species which are evolved or formed after such kind of isolations are called species with sympatric speciation. Students, how many types of evolution do you know? Let me give you 1 minute to think about it. Have you tried some, students? Very good. If you mentioned convergent evolution, divergent evolution, and parallel evolution, you are correct. And let's see these three types of evolutions one by one. The first one is convergent evolution. Convergent evolution occurs when a species of different ancestral origins but have developed similar features. Organisms with different origin but having similar features are the result of convergent evolution. As an example, we can mention streamlined body shapes of sharks and dolphins. As you can see, these are dolphins and these are sharks. They have similar features in their habitats, but these features are not from the same origin. So convergent evolution, it is a type of evolution where organisms from different origins, but in order to live the same, such kind of evolution is called convergent evolution. Silk producing ability of spiders is also another example. And silkworms, silk mosses, and weaver ants, they have similar type of silk producing features, but their origin is different. So organisms from different origin but having similar feature are the result of convergent evolution. The second type of evolution is called divergent evolution. It is a process whereby groups from the same common ancestor evolved and accumulated differences, resulting formation of a new species. So it may occur as a response to change in abiotic factors, such as change in environmental conditions, or when a new niche becomes available. A good example is allopatric and peripatric speciation. Darwin, he moves to Galapagos Island. He observed different types of finches. Finches are birds which have the same genetic information or the same genetic material, but different types of feeding habits. Because of the difference in their beak type, they feed different types of food. This difference came from the common ancestor. This shows that these different types of finches have the same origin, but having different functions. Such kind of evolution is called divergent evolution. Is it clear, students? Very good. Let's see the third and the last type of evolution, which is called parallel evolution. It is independent evolution of similar traits, starting from a similar ancestral conditions. Organisms which are living in different area, but they show similar type of evolution are called parallel evolution. It is caused by a repeated evolution of the same phenotype and genotype in evolutionary independent populations. North American cactus and the African euphorbia have developed similar adaptations, which is their thick stems. Cactus, there are different types of cactuses. So they have thick stems and also sharp quills. This adaptation, they are found in different continents, but the climatic conditions make them to develop similar type of evolution. Such kind of evolution is called parallel evolution. Okay, this will be the end of our lesson. Today we have seen different types of processes of evolution. In the process of evolution, we have seen points regarding natural selection, the type of natural selections. There are 3 types of natural selections, as we have seen before, which is directional and dispersive, and also stabilizing type of natural selections. We have seen evolution, types of evolution. We have seen natural selection types. If these points are clear, next time we are going to discuss about human evolution. Until next time, stay safe, stay home.